I was so blessed this week to be teaching a group of students. We were doing morphology. Morphology is the study of words. The morpheme we were looking at is prefixes. Prefixes are letters or word you put in front of a word to change the meaning. The word in particular which we were looking at was the prefix tele, T-E-L-E. What tele mean? We know phone, right? Phone, I think phone is a Greek word which means sound. As though we have phonics, phonology. So when you put tele to phone, you get telephone. So phone means sound, and tele as a prefix means distance. So when you put tele to phone, you get telephone, which is something you use, a device that you use to communicate with people who are a distance away, because tele means distance. Just as with television, right? You see it from far away, from a distance. So I asked a question. Okay, so it wasn't a question. I made a statement. We could use a telephone to call someone in Africa. I was trying to use a place that is a bit of a distance away across the Atlantic. But I also want to use a country that means so much to the world. You know, not just to me, but to the world, because most of the resources in the world, a number of the resources in the world comes from out of Africa, one way or another. And then one student remarked, why would they want to call Africa? Do they even have water over there? And I was like, this is the great injustice that Africa faces. Here is a child asking if there's even water, running water in Africa. I can't blame the child. The child is very much innocent because the child would have known if the child was taught. And so the fact that the child was not taught, it can't be the child's fault. And this is a great teaching moment. It's an absolute great teaching moment because it gives me a chance to bring the child out of a dark state into the light. So the child is now into the known, removing Israel from out of the unknown. So the child is now in the know. And I was saying, yes, Africa is more than just lions, tigers, monkeys, and elephants. Africa is not a big jungle. Africa is very much civilized like anywhere in the world. In fact, the first university in the world was in Africa. When we speak of wealth, we don't even talk about Mansa Musa out of Africa. You know, we don't talk about it. Mansa Musa came to across the Caribbean, across the Atlantic into the Caribbean and South America long before Christopher Columbus. But we don't really teach those kind of things. You know, when we speak of architecture, we don't talk about the pyramids in Egypt. You know, and all those kind of things. You know, we don't talk about those things. We don't talk about the development of Africa. If it was not for the African movies, a number of people in the world would not know that Africa have nice houses and that some of the most expensive cars in the world are in Africa. The Bentleys, the Mercedes, the Range Rovers, the Lexus, whatever, the Ferrari, whatever the model of car is that draw some kind of attention to it and have a certain price to it. They are in Africa. Some of the most lavish estates are in Africa. But that does not come out of Africa. What they see on the news, and I blame the news as well, the Western media, for portraying Africa as a big jungle. When I was a little boy growing up and we were watching TV, we mostly see Africa through National Geographic. National Geographic used to come on TV and TVJ when we were growing up. And it was mostly about some hunters from the Americas going into Africa to hunt, to shoot lions or to hunt down leopards, or to film documentary of zebras and the way in which elephants live in a family, and all lions live as a pride and as a family, and all the various documentaries. And that was the most we see about Africa. We never saw the streets, we never saw the development, we never saw the houses, we never saw the minerals coming out of Africa. We never saw these things. We didn't see the educated people coming out of Africa, the professors and the lawyers, the doctors, and those other professionals. We don't see them. We don't see those things about Africa. What we were sold in the media was Africa as a jungle, lions, leopards, tigers, monkeys swinging from tree to tree, and elephants, and all those different kind of animals, you know. So I could not blame the child. So I had to seize the opportunity to say, look, Africa is more than just a jungle that you see on TV. Africa is a developed society. Yes, there are places in Africa which are not developed in the modern context as we look at it. But that is like every single where. There are places in England where it is rural. There are places in Australia where people don't have basic necessities. There are places, even here in America, where people don't even have internet. There are places in the Central America and South America where people don't have certain amenities. You know, it's a global thing. You know, it's not like there are some countries that doesn't have a rural area where resources are scarce. Every single place in the world have those kind of things, but they choose to show the world the undeveloped parts of Africa. And I would not say uncivilized either, as some people would not oftentimes say, because it is a civilization. It was not because it is not as modern as some places mean not a civilization. It is a civilization, you know, because they have some structures and governance and rules in place. It is a civilization. They're not running all around barbaric and behaving as if they're crazy and have no sense of direction. No. These are structured communities with leaders and their own rules and regulations as to how humans ought to function. You know, so that's a developed society, you know. So it just shows us that there's so much to learn about Africa, you know, and what it also unveils, as it unveils the arrogance and the ignorance the world have towards Africa. What it also unveils, it unveils the need to teach our younger generation about Africa, to enlighten them, to get the basic knowledge and idea as to what Africa is and the important role African resources play in the different parts of the world. The amount of minerals coming out of Africa to do things in China and in Europe and all those developed societies, you know. So many resources coming out of Africa going to England, they're going to France, they're going to Italy, they're going to Russia, they're going to China, they're going to India. So many resources coming out of Africa going to different parts of the world, resources coming to America, whether it is raw material or finished product. You know, so Africa make a large contribution to the development of the world, and even the people of Africa who were transported to different parts of the world to contribute to that country's growth and development. Some of the most major infrastructure that was developed in many parts of the known world are people from African descent, you know, who did those construction. And it was not that they were taught to do it when they got there. It's because they have the skills which they came from out of Africa with, the intelligence that they came from out of Africa with. But through that agenda to silence African and to not let the talent of Africa shine, Africans were pushed back. And so when Africans developed certain things, they were not able to have the patent for certain things which they have created, for certain of their intellectual properties or their designs. They were not able to patent it and to get legal rights for it because they were not able, accepted as civilized and equal beings to do so in the legal process. And so Africans were pushed back and have always been pushed back even today, 500 years later. Africans are still struggling to push themselves forward in this society, and so our children are growing up with this level of ignorance that Africa is not a developed place and it's not a place that they want to go to. And so when you use Africa in reference to a number of children who have my skin complexion, they feel offended. Even some adults as well. When you mention Africa to some adults, they get offended. They do not want you to make reference of their identity to Africa. They will tell you clear, I'm not an African, because they do not feel that sense of pride. There's nothing proud for them to feel about the continent of Africa. And that's because they lack the knowledge of the history of Africa, the true history of Africa, not what they read in the media, but the true history of Africa and the integral part we play in the development of societies right around the world, And even today, we have some of the most intellectual people right around the world out of Africa who are making major contribution in Europe, in Asia, in Australia, in the Americas, so that's North America, South America. They're making major contribution right across the world. And so we must find a way to educate our children. And I truly believe that the onus is on each person of African descent or of my complexion, wherever we are. We need to seize the opportunity to teach the younger generation about the values of Africa, whether you're a classroom teacher or whether you are a football coach working with children of African descent, whether you are a librarian seeing children coming in to read books, whether you are even a garbage collector who goes to the different communities and you see children, seize the opportunity to say something to them, to let them know that, look, not because you are in America and you live in this country, or not because you're in Canada, or not because you are in whatever country outside of Africa that you are a product of Africa, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. Be proud of it, embrace it, It will take years, though. It will take years and take a collective effort. Whether you're a pastor, you're preaching, whatever it is you're doing, you need to educate those children, whatever it might want to be. Whether you're a dance instructor, where you're working with children, whatever you do where children are involved, ensure you seize the opportunity to let them know that, look, it's nothing bad about Africa for you to feel ashamed. There is injustice all over the world. There is killing all over the world. There is suffering all over the world. There are challenges economically all over the world, government all over the world of corruption. Be proud of being identified as an African. Be proud of your complexion. Be proud of your color of your skin. It doesn't mean that you're ugly. It doesn't mean that you're worthless. It doesn't mean that you come from a country which has no value, And we're not trying to teach them to believe as if they are better than anybody else. But they must understand that, look, you are just as good. You are just as good. I will never tell my children or my child or a child on the street that, okay, you are of this complexion and so you are better than everybody else. No. And same way, I will not teach them that the other complexion is better than them either. We're just as good enough. Whatever complexion you are, whether you're from China, whether you're from Africa, whether you're from India, whichever ethnic group you come from, whether you're Russian or German, wherever you come from, you're just as good. You're just as good. We're not saying anybody's better than anybody here. We're just as good. And Africans need to sit at the table to let others know that, look, we are just as good. Though the narrative might not be the same, we are just as good. And so it still bothers me, though, to know that the narrative in 2025 is that a number of children are afraid of Africa and they do not want to be associated with Africa. They're ashamed of Africa. And so it must be a collective effort, though, by us as a people to let our children know the truth about Africa. That Africa is just as good and can be just as good as anywhere else in the world.